Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review the latest film drops or throwbacks while celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie, snacks and foods. No, snacks and foods, snacks and drinks, my bad. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and right now I am enjoying a nice holiday twisted tea. It's bomb pop flavor, which actually tastes like a bomb pop. It's dangerous. And then the new love of my life is churro Kit Kats. These things are amazing, and they kind of taste like the churros from Disneyland, which is why I'm loving them so much. But that's what I'm snacking and drinking on. But I am so excited to introduce our guests today. Kyle, Jen, and Toni, thank you for being here. We'll start with you, Toni. What are you drinking and snacking on today?
I'm drinking on some like 5-hour-old tea. That's just how my ADHD gets down sometimes. I've texted my boyfriend to bring me another glass of water, so then I'll also have some water to hydrate myself. It's not incredibly exciting over here. So back to you, Erric.
Good. I mean, water hydration. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us got a lot more sun than we wanted to if we were going out to festivities and everything yesterday. So
yeah.
Definitely water. Jen, speaking of water and doing outside activities yesterday, what are you snacking and drinking on?
Well, I have 2 liters of water here that I am bound to drink throughout this whole hour. But I also am enjoying a mango cart because it was the closest thing I had to a blonde. And then I have some beef and cabbage stir fry with rice.
Ooh, that's delicious.
It's not related to anything, but it was food.
It's food. My roommate's making stew right now, which is not related to the movie at all, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
And Kyle, thank you for being here. What are you drinking and snacking on tonight?
So I've got my my usual soda, but in this case, it's rocking, and I don't think people can see it well, but it's rocking the Disney Pride vanilla smelling cupcake topper for my straw because I'm trying to drink more things out of a straw, water, and then a shawarmizza. And it is a pizza shawarma. It is spicy Italian sausage, pepperoni, mozzarella cheese, and peppercini with a little bit of marinara.
I'm going to have to find and try a shawarmizza. Like, that sounds very interesting. Closest I get to here is a birria pizza. So if you haven't tried one of those, try one of those. They're delicious. But thank you guys for being here today. Today we are talking about the 1953 Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is celebrating 70 years. It's crazy that it's that old already. But I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get started and dive into this, I do want to let you guys know that we are still fundraising for the Trevor Project, which is a nonprofit organization focused on suicide prevention efforts among the LGBTQIA or LGBTQI, if any of you out there have heard that little wonderful phrase, which I love. But I'm excited to dive into this with you guys because it is so old. Times have changed, and things that may have been in the movie have definitely changed with all of us now. But I want to get you guys' when you guys like first saw this, how old were you? What did you think about it? For me, I saw it when I was really young. I have a lot of family members that are in love with Marilyn Monroe. So I definitely saw this when I was young, just like Some Like It Hot. And so it's always just been a staple in my movie category since I was probably like 4 or 5. Remember just sitting down watching it on TV when it came on to like all the specials and absolutely loved it. But Jen, when did you first see this movie and what were your thoughts about it?
Well, I couldn't tell you what year it was. It would have been on like Turner Classic Movies or one of those types of channels. And I was probably up with a cranky baby and it was the middle of the night and I put that on and just rocked them and watched it. So my memories of it would be very fuzzy and exhausted, new mom memories, but I did watch it again today. Okay. So the colors, I'm like, did I see it this vibrant or was I just tired? So it's the colors were amazing. Of course, the clothes. I am a sucker for vintage clothes. You can't tell by looking at me right now because I am trashed. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's endearing. But yeah, it's definitely was made in a different time. There was some stuff where I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna say that, are we? So, but yeah, didn't hold up in some ways, but it it is still very much a classic. So
Yes. No, I agree with you. And we'll get into some of those more uncouth haters that have happened. Toni, when do you remember watching this movie, or have you watched it throughout the years and everything?
First time was definitely in high school. I went through my Marilyn Monroe phase in high school. To this day, my favorite movie is Some Like It Hot, which is the classic that she does with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. But I remember getting like this sort of like, I can't remember. It was one of those like 6 movie box sets. I don't remember the exact number, but it was like Some Like It Hot, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, 7-Year Itch, like all of like her big, no business, like show business. So like all of like her biggest, most famous movies all like into this one box set. And yeah, this one took me a while to get to, and I don't understand why. But when I finally watched it, I just was like, oh, I finally understood where all these like pop culture references that, have definitely been ripped off. Like all these things that like I was like receiving through osmosis, either through other movies or like Saturday morning cartoons. And I just finally understood a good chunk of it. And I finally understood like, oh, this is one of those movies that like everybody saw. And they were and it was so famous that everybody decided to do their own version of it or rip it off or reference it in some way. I definitely watched it over the years. I actually watched it just a few weeks ago. Cinespia also did a Hollywood Forever. One of their first summer movie showings back in Hollywood Forever Cemetery was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And it was such an amazing time. I always love when the old movies are playing at Cinespia because it's just like it's like an older crowd. It's definitely the crowd that, they enjoy retro fashion. The DJ was on point, just sort of like doing these really amazing remixes of, older 40s and 50s show tunes. And, so it was just, a fantastic time, fantastic crowd. And then when this came up to talk about it again, like I had to pounce on it. So.
Oh yeah, no, I was right there with you when this came up to talk about it. I was like, I'm doing that one for sure. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. If it was Some Like It Hot, I would have been there even quicker. But Kyle, what were your thoughts about this movie? Like, when did you see it? Do you remember watching it when you were younger and everything?
So I wasn't one of the people that watched it when I was younger necessarily, but I did pick up on it through all the pop culture references, and I was asking questions of my mother, ironically, after the references in Birds of Prey, where Harley Quinn duplicates the iconic diamonds are a girl's best friend number. So this was officially I'll be the new player here because I have not seen Some Like It Hot, and I haven't seen any other Marilyn Monroe films. This is my first introduction to Marilyn, beyond the world of, unfortunately, dramatic Hollywood, old Hollywood gravitas and strange sequined purses that you'd find on, for sale in places with Marilyn's image on them. So this is my first introduction to her truly as an actress, which is the motivation behind my popcorn rating, because she's a genuinely special talent that I never really realized. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun for what it is. And, there's definitely some things that I don't see as holding up, but to me there were some things that struck me as very as someone who grew up with Turner Classic Movies and with a mother and a grandmother and family who were, like most of us, just wanted to watch all the classics. There were some things that struck me as very interesting in juxtaposition with this. So I enjoyed it.
Okay, good. Well, welcome to the age of Marilyn. Definitely watch some of her other ones because she is a literal star. Like if you watch her on screen, in everything she is a star. I want to jump into the chat really quick because the chat's going off already. Q Ball, hi Q, welcome. Nice to see you again. Says I watched the movie in high school during homeroom first hour on movie day and thought it was good, but it was a little slow here and there, and the jokes were so over my head. But I agree, it is no doubt a classic movie. Marilyn Monroe is very iconic in this movie, which I definitely agree with you, Q Ball. There's something about her power and Jane Russell in this movie and their dynamic back and forth that just makes this movie what it is. And before we start like breaking down like the story and everything like that, I want to jump into popcorn ratings. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 popcorns because I still love it and everything about it, but like there's little things in the movie, like Q-Ball said, the pacing in some parts are a little slow. Definitely how like it's a movie celebrating women or whatever, but it's really not. They're making it just like seem like stupid and stuff like that. So all the things that updated now to our age definitely need to be updated. But for the time that it came out in 1953, love it. Wish things we could change it. Wouldn't change anything about it, but that's what I have to give it for now because that was 70 years ago. Kyle, we'll start with you. What was your popcorn rating and why?
So I said 5, and I think it's because I said it as a specimen of a classic film. This had all the hallmarks of what you would think when you think of a classic movie. Very bright, technicolor, beautiful starlets, leading men who, you know, were grabbing the screen even though they didn't necessarily command a performance. You definitely could watch this and say that Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe were the stars. They looked at it, and their love interests were pretty gosh darn bland, shall we say. And so I picked it. I said 5 because it's a specimen of what you would think a classic movie would look like. There's some things that don't hold up for sure. But it's like those, to me, I would put one of those warnings up, like what they do for the old Looney Tunes cartoons, where it's like, this film is a product of its time. And, you know, you go in with a grain of salt in regards to it being a product of its time, because it is a specimen of the kind of stuff that Hollywood would, you know, produce. But there's some stuff in it that I also found pretty, I don't want to say progressive, but I do want to say interesting for the time period. And it's just little things like there's decisions in the story that, you know, we'll go into that I found really interesting, knowing what I know about classic Hollywood. But I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody's take. So that's why I said 5. It's a specimen. If I were to take this into a class teaching about classic film, I would be like, this is what a classical film would look like. Let's break it down and let's dissect it. You know?
Okay. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Once we get into the story, I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on the different things and everything like that. Toni, or actually, we'll go with you, Jen. Jen, what was your popcorn rating and why?
I also gave it a 4.5. I agree with what you said. And it was not always. Sometimes they wrote Marilyn quite smart. And then sometimes I was like, oh, honey, they just wrote her so dumb. And they did, I mean, we could do 2 hours on the disservice that Hollywood in general did to Marilyn Monroe in her life, but that's not what we're talking about. So, you know, Jane Russell's character was fairly consistent throughout the whole movie. She knew what she wanted. She was pretty smart. She came across as pretty smart, and Marilyn she always seemed to have to kind of pull Marilyn back down to the ground. But then Marilyn had these great ideas throughout the movie and these little plans. There was some pretty borderline creepy things. The little kid. We'll get to that for sure. I was just like, when he walked up to the table, I was like, oh no. But I will say, for as much as movies back then objectified women, we got a whole lot of men objectified in this movie. It was very evenly done. And I was not upset. No. I enjoyed it. Like, I could turn my brain off and just enjoy the pageantry and the colors and the singing. And it was just a classic Hollywood movie musical, just what you wanted from it, right? You didn't have to think too hard about it. And except I did leave the room at a point, and I came back and I was like, why is Jane Russell blonde? What's happening? So I did confuse myself for a moment. So no, 4.5. It's a solid. You want a classic movie on a rainy day, throw this on and you're going to have some sunshine in your living room. So
Yep, it does bring the colors. Technicolor at the time, like just starting. So yeah, definitely the colors. Toni, what was your popcorn rating and why?
My popcorn rating is 4 out of 5. I think really the only strikes that I can give against it, outside of, you know, the things that are obviously, you know, products of its time. The plot is pretty thin. There's a song and dance number. They get on a boat. There's more song and dance numbers. They get off the boat. There's more song and dance numbers. They inevitably, one of them ends up in a court scene, and there's more song and dance numbers. So I mean, there's a lot. It's one of those movies where it's like, okay, like this is not, or I'm not here for a plot. Let's all just be honest about it. I'm here for all the glamour and all the Technicolor pizzazz that it can give me. I am here for song and dance numbers. I'm here for beautiful people and beautiful clothes and beautiful settings. Like, that's exactly what I'm here for. And I totally agree with Kyle about, it's one of those movies that's just like a perfect example of this like specific genre of film. And it's funny because one of Marilyn's previous films, like one of her like first major roles was All About Eve. Which is the movie I always point to whenever, you know, if somebody was like, well, what's like the quintessential black and white old Hollywood movie, you know, the whole Hollywood drama that I can watch, I'm like, that's All About Eve. Beautiful people saying very like dramatic and witty things and gorgeous clothes, and you know, and then literally that was only 3 years prior from this film. And to see the shift from a black and white drama to a Technicolor comedy, this musical comedy, it's incredible how different, you know, everything looks, everything feels, how crisp everything is. And yeah, there's a lot of things that I enjoy about this movie to this day. While there are definitely things where I'm just like, all right, sure, we would not do that now, ever again. However, there's so many things that like we would definitely do and that we now consider to be incredibly progressive. Marilyn Monroe, even though she is written in some scenes to be very ditzy, she's also very practical. And her monologue about, you know, when she's actually having her big confrontation scene, you know, at the end of the third act with, you know, her fiance's father, that's been making the rounds on TikTok because everyone's like, she's making a lot of sense for a supposed gold digger. And, you know, there's just a lot of, and then again, there were like those fantastic scenes from, you know, there's that walkthrough scene where they're both walking through the dining room and they're both like just like looking incredible and amazing and just turning heads. That's also been making the rounds on social media. It's just sort of like, man, how gorgeous like movies used to be and how amazingly amazing that movie stars used to be. Yeah, so I love it for so many reasons. And yeah, but I also have to just kind of like be aware of the fact that I am 100% dazzled by all the razzle dazzle. But if I were to actually try to objectively look at this, like, yeah, there's not much happening. There's just not much happening.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree with you, especially in this time when they started getting into Technicolor and everything. It was just like, look, shiny, beautiful, look at the clothes and costumes, but there's actually not much story here, guys. And you're like, okay, I'll just take it.
No one cares.
Nobody, no, especially at the time, nobody cares. But we are going to break into what they say is the storyline of it, because it does break down what they do. But the story is Laura Lee, who's Marilyn Monroe, is a beautiful showgirl engaged to be married to the wealthy Gus Esmond, Tommy Noonan. Much to his disapproval of Gus's rich father, Edmund Sr., who thinks that Lorelei is just after his money. When Lorelei goes on a cruise accompanied by her best friend, Dorothy Shaw, which is Jane Russell, Edmund Sr. hires Ernie Malone, Elliot Reed, as a private detective to follow her and report any questionable behavior that would disqualify her from marriage. So this whole plot of this movie is there are two women on a boat. A detective is trying to catch Marilyn Monroe doing something shisty and just gold diggy the whole entire time. There's a lot of song and dance numbers. There's a song in the pool. There's a song when they get on the boat. There's plenty of dance and song numbers. We also meet Piggy, who is a diamond, has a diamond mine, owns a diamond mine, played by Charles Coburn. And we meet Henry Spatterfell, which is George Winslow, who plays a little boy who she thinks is a millionaire, which he does have money, but he's also like 7. So we meet him and shenanigans get on the boat. They end up catching, Mr. Malone ends up catching Marilyn's character, Lorelei Lee, with Piggy, pretending to be snakes, and gets a photo and everything. Get off the boat. She gets dumped by her fiance, which is Esmond. And her and Dorothy end up like pretty much penniless in Paris, trying to figure it out. There's also a part of the story where she apparently steals a tiara and the cops are after her. And then at the end of the movie, they end up going to court with this tiara fiasco, but turns out Piggy actually took the tiara back from her and was trying to commit insurance fraud pretty much. Everybody gets away with it. She marries her millionaire. Dorothy marries the private eye detective, and everybody lives a long, happy life. To break it down without going too detailed into it. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this storyline? Like, I know you said you had a couple of issues and everything like that. What are your thoughts on this overall story?
So, going into it, I feel like there were things there. There's this overall attitude as somebody who, I think if you live it, there's this overall attitude, if you're any aware of the history of film, that sometimes there's people and they're writing something and it's like, you almost had it. You almost had a progressive modern idea in this era. You almost had it. It's like this big "you tried" star in the sky. And that's to me what this was, because I loved the relationship between Dorothy and Lorelai. And the book that it's based on, because it is based on a book, is apparently like really raunchy jazz age. And it really dealt with the empowering relationship between two women. And some of the shenanigans that they get up to are genuinely, Thelma and Louise level, like girl power. And it's, I think that, yes, they did write them frivolous and silly, but I would argue that they, much like what Toni said, I agree with Toni, it's making the rounds on TikTok, because there is something to be said for the power of femininity and using that on masculine individuals. And that's what this whole thing was about, is that these are two women. They know they're gorgeous. They know that they're going to be able to get their way out of anything. And there were so many moments where that happened. And then there were so many ditzy things that happened afterwards. So many things that was just like, you missed the mark. You tried. You almost had something that would have been like still holding up till today, but it didn't nail it. But I loved the relationship between the two of them, because there really were some moments where it was just very progressive. The men did not stand out to me at all. Beyond the scene, there's a scene in the steam room, and I'm sure everybody else is going to talk about this, but the scene in the steam room where we had the Olympic athlete team, because they go on the boat, there's all these Olympic athletes, and the Olympic athlete team is just demonstrating their physical prowess. And watching that, I was just like, I was just watching it, and I was just like, this is pretty interesting, because in movies of this time period in the 40s, this would all be women doing this. This would be women flipping upside down and wiggling around, and the guy would be dancing amidst all these beautiful women. But instead, you have Dorothy Shaw, you have Jane Russell, who's moving amongst these men who are definitely physical specimens. And I was really struck by that juxtaposition. And for me, that's what defines it, is that this is a classic example of something that you can break down and you can kind of examine. But they had some really solid ideas. They just didn't run with them. It was like, oh, brain blast, and then nothing. But I really love. I liked big pieces of the story, and the color and everything else with it. So yeah.
Okay, cool. I am gonna jump to the chat really quickly before I get to you, Jen and Toni. Q says he gives it a 4.5 as well, because the pacing is a little slow here and there, but the vibe that Marilyn gave in this film is very Girl Next Door mixed with sensual beauty and grace. So many iconic moments and lines in this movie, but also Q has redeemed Hydrate. So cheers, everybody. Thank you so much, Q. And yes, thank you. We definitely need to hydrate, like I just said. But Jen, what are your thoughts on this story? Like overall, like, do you have any issues with it? Like, what's your favorite part? All of that.
I liked Jane Russell's character, but there was one point where I'm like, lady, you're going to be living. I have a friend that always says, well, that's going to happen behind the Cheesecake Factory one day. And meet me behind the Cheesecake Factory. And all I could think of was, Jane, you're going to be living behind the Cheesecake Factory. So, I mean, you say you don't care about money, but you're then you go to Paris and you buy everything. So I'm all, which is it? No, I think she was a good balance for Lorelai. They balanced each other out to a point, but they were both way extreme. Like there was no, they were like this. There wasn't any middle ground with those two. I feel like Lorelai was real smart, but super gullible. Like the whole pig with the goat or the snake with the pig, whatever that was, where Piggy was like, I'm going to show you how the snake would kill this ant. I was like, wait, what happened here? Come on, Lorelai. And the wife just putting up with it. That man would have been off the side of the boat, just off the side of the boat. Come on. Oh. But you know, to Kyle's point, yeah, to have all these guys working out, and then there's Jane Russell pretty much fully dressed, walking through the middle of them. A few years before would have been 100% flipped around. And I mean, it would have been Ethel Merman and all the mermaids in the water in their little skimpy skimpy for that time bathing suits, not skimpy for now. But the story was very thin. It moved, in spite of the pacing, the story moved along a lot faster than any of those events would have actually moved along. Though, I mean, they were crossing to France, so it was a very long cruise. And then she gets, you know, it was just all a little absurd, but I don't think it was meant to be a deep thinking piece. It was just meant to be fluffy. And because the title, even Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, had nothing to do with anything in the movie. You know, I mean, the brunette got a guy. It wasn't like everybody was passing by her to go for Marilyn. Yeah, it just, I had to keep reminding myself, stop thinking about what the title has to do with the movie, because it has nothing to do with the movie. Because I always try to, you know, nowadays people try to get so deep with what they name a movie and how does it tie into something. And this was absolutely didn't tie into anything at all. Maybe it's the title of the book it's based on, but yeah, it was very fluffy. I had to turn off my brain a little bit and just go with the flow. I will say cafes in France, well, I mean, I was in France in 2005, so it's been a while. They're still the same. You sit facing out away. So they've been the same apparently for 70 years. I didn't have an audience while we sat and sang at our tables or anything like that, but you know, no impromptu cabaret broke out in my cafe when I was there. Sadly, it would have been fun. No, I think it was just one little fluffy vignette after another that was sort of tied together by this, hey, catch this girl doing something bad so she can't marry my son and get my money plot. But I wasn't there for the story. I was there for the singing and Marilyn and Jane in beautiful clothes. So I loved it. That's all I needed.
I mean, that's all any of us could ask for. But like you said, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes doesn't really have to do with a blonde. Like there's a quote from Marilyn where they told her like she wasn't the lead of the movie, and she's just like, well, at least I'm still the blonde. Like just going with it because that's what it was. Especially N53. She was making so many movies at that time. She didn't care. She didn't even know where she was. Right. But Toni, what were your thoughts on this plot and storyline?
Well, I just did some grief because I was like, there were so many movies and shows and books of the time where, the title was not reflective of the actual content. It was more just as that was their marketing. They just picked on, you know, either a saying or a nice little quip or something that just would catch the ear or eye of, you know, of somebody just passing by. So that's what I always took it as. But reading on about the book, because movie is based on a play that's based on a book. So based on the book, so Lorelai is supposed to be the main character, the main protagonist, and Dorothy as the brunette is just supposed to be sort of like the best friend, you know, the sidekick character. So, but Marilyn was definitely in this trend where she was always in these team up movies. You know, it was very much an Avengers symbol for like these next few years because she did this one. She did How to Marry a Millionaire with Lauren Bacall and Betty Grable. She did, you know, the Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier. So they were always partnering her up with some sort of foil, or a group of other individuals that would serve as the foil. It wasn't until later where they would actually just be like, we can go ahead and acknowledge the fact that Marilyn Monroe is Marilyn Monroe, because once you do that, you have to pay Marilyn Monroe. And then you also have to deal with the fact that your star is Marilyn Monroe, where depending on what part of her life that she's at, sometimes wasn't always like the easiest relationship to navigate. So I didn't even give the title really much credence. I just thought it was like, well, yeah, they just picked anything that just sort of sounded nice and sounded good. Anything that would look remotely interesting on a marquee is kind of like how I took it. But now knowing what the book is and that it is supposed to be about completely Lorelai, like, yeah, that I guess I just figured like maybe the people who really love the play are really actually coming to see this movie. But anyways, as far as the entire, plot, no one cares. I don't care. I'm so not here for the story. I'm not here for the plot. 100% here for the clothes. I'm here for Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe. They have amazing chemistry. I don't know what their real life relationship and dynamic was, but it would not be difficult for me to believe that they genuinely enjoyed working together. I've seen, some promotional stills, like, their handprints are like some of the most famous handprints that are outside of now the TCL, but the Grauman's Chinese Theater. Yeah, I mean, like, this is a great, fantastic, just exhibition of just people having amazing chemistry and just existing. And I think it's definitely something where we are living in an age of lowercase actors, where if you give them a script, they can, act their asses off. But if you want a movie star, those are few and far between. I mean, there are very few people that can just stand there and just like dazzle and just be completely magnetic. I can only name like a handful right now that are currently working. Because that's not who we employ anymore. We like everymen. We like people that feel like people that we could know, which is, fine. But it's like, sometimes you want a Chris Hemsworth. Sometimes you want, a Henry Cavill. But that's not the guy, next door. But back then, that's all who we were employing in Hollywood. And if they weren't, you were a character actor or a character actress. So I just really like the fact that this is just a really long, prolonged excuse to get movie stars together and let them do movie star things.
Yes, no, I'm right there. I'm with you. I mean, especially in this time in Hollywood, everybody was under contract. Marilyn was under contract. Jane, all of them. Everybody in this movie was under a contract that you have to make so many movies. Or if you were a different studio's actress or actor and they wanted you, they were going to pay you some money. Like, for instance, Marilyn this wasn't even supposed to be her actual role. When this movie came out, it was going to be Grable. You just said it, Toni.
Betty Grable.
Betty Grable. Yes, thank you. It was supposed to go to her, but she turned it down because just a couple of years before they had done it on Broadway with Carol Channing, and she felt that it should have gone to Carol Channing instead of everybody else. So, yeah, no, it's fair. But then they brought Marilyn on with Jane Russell, and since Marilyn was under contract, Marilyn got paid $500 a week. So she only ended up inevitably making like $17,000, to where Jane Russell made $200,000 for this movie. So it's very interesting. We're gonna get into the cast now. Speaking of Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe and all of them, what did you guys think of this cast? Because obviously storyline not there, but this casting, I think they did a pretty good job, especially with that little boy. Even though kind of awkward situation, I thought that little boy was freaking hilarious, especially the scene where she's stuck in the window and he's the hand and like sticks it out and he's like, stop it. Like, loved it. What did you guys think of this cast? Toni, we'll start with you on this one.
I love the cast. I think it's a fantastic cast, even though I think it was Kyle who mentioned that the men do not impress. Who cares? It could have been any breathing dude. Throw him in a suit, put glasses on that one guy. It could have been anybody, frankly. But that's not why we're here. When you mentioned that Betty Grable might have taken Lorelai, like, yeah, she's cute, she's blonde, and she could have played, gullible and ditzy all day long, but she has a very like like a street smart kind of like quality to her. And I just feel like that she would really have to exercise some acting chops in order to like fulfill like what Marilyn could just do. I shouldn't say easily, because, you know, everyone knows that like the whole like Marilyn Monroe like persona was an act that even she would do. So, but, and the little kid's amazing. I definitely also didn't bat an eye at the little kid thing, because I've seen that trope, and maybe it's because it started here. I've seen that, like, immediately I thought of that ending scene of The Princess and the Frog when Charlotte is dancing with the little brother, the other little prince, and it's like a 7-year-old who's like dancing on top of her feet because it's the only way that he can reach. There's a few movies that do like that, or Temple of Doom also did it when Billy is like asking about the Maharaja, and the Maharaja is like a 10-year-old kid. So I've seen that trope before, but yeah, that kid is delightful. Piggy is disgusting. And he's meant to be. He's meant to be reprehensible, even though somehow unassuming, just being like innocently pervy, but it's just like, I see you, Piggy. Lady Beekman is exactly as she should be. All the character actors are doing exactly what they need to do. Yeah, so I had a great time with this cast.
Good. Yeah, no, you can't, like Kyle said, the men are forgettable, but you're not watching it for them. You're watching it for Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe anyway. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts on this cast?
So, I want to take a second to shout out Marilyn and to shout out Lorelai for a thing, because I think Marilyn was the only person who could really give that character the nuance that she had. It's like, because you guys are saying, yeah, she's gullible, yeah, she's this, yeah, she's this, but to me, Lorelai was the sort of character that's like, well, I know exactly who I am, I know exactly what I want, I know exactly, you know, where I sit in the universe and everything else. But much like, you know, a male actor, she would have you know, a trigger, and her trigger was diamonds. And it was just like, that's what makes her, you know, like, you know, you'd have James Bond, and James Bond would be like, the women, or you'd have somebody else, they'd be like, this. No, for her, it was very much diamonds. So she really brought a fleshed out character, even though she was playing a very gullible, ditzy person. So I really liked that Monroe brought, like, you could really sense that she was giving a performance. It wasn't just the, you know, well, I don't know what I'm doing necessarily for any of this. And so I really enjoyed that. The trope with the kid does not hold up as well. And I think that's why with Princess and the Frog, it sticks to live action, because I think it's going to go, or to animated, because I think it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. Live action, I don't think it would hold up as well, especially with younger generation like Gen Z. I definitely don't see Gen Z liking that trope very much. No disrespect to anyone in the Gen Z audience. It is a little outdated, but that kid was extremely funny. I laughed. I really laughed. You know, the men get a good thumbs up. You were there. You did your thing. We salute you. You showed up. You made your money. Good job. But and then all the character actors were fabulous. It was exactly what you would expect, but the really nuanced performances came from Monroe and Russell. And you know, everyone else was just kind of built on that. It's a buddy cop movie. You could put it's a buddy cop movie with two women. And I will close with, when you guys were talking about how there's no real stars anymore, it says something that, you know, you can think of a lot of men that would be in Monroe's position, but you can't think of a lot of women except for her. Like, you could think of all the actors in the MCU, and you can think of all the female actors in the MCU very easily, and you should, but the staying power of Monroe is just there. And you know, and they never really gave her the credit where it was due, because this is a really fascinating performance.
Oh yeah, no, completely agree with you. Like, Monroe and Russell are the stars of this movie, and like Toni was saying, there aren't those stars now. I mean, the 50s was a different time in film. Like, we had Judy Garland, we had Jane Russell, Marilyn Monroe. We had all of these household names that we still remember today. Yeah, Toni?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on that. And I'm like, what I mean by that, we don't hire triple threats anymore. There are plenty of triple threats out there, but we don't hire them as a requirement. We no longer require people to do all the things, and that's why, Marilyn, has a very distinctive voice, but even early on in her career, she was dubbed all the time. She had to be. But it was a requirement. Like if you were going to be in a movie, chances are you would have a song somewhere eventually.
Yep.
And nowadays, we're hiring people purely on their acting skills. And if they can dance or if they can sing, that's a bonus. But I think it's just by virtue of the fact that people grow up, like if you're starting out as a kid, you're starting out in community theater or high school productions, you're not exactly doing it the way that they used to do it back then, which is like, oh no, you got to like work on everything actively. Like now that you're trying to make it, if you've landed in Hollywood somewhere, you're going to your dance class, you're working with your singing coach, you're taking elocution and posture classes, you're doing all those things. Right. And nowadays it's like, there's targeted training for specific roles. And there are those who really dive deep into like method and all the things that they might require for a specific role. But we used to pump out these movies ad nauseum. There used to be like 20 of these kinds of movies, like in a couple of months. I mean, and we weren't putting out very many movies per month, but it's just it was just a different time, Hollywood produced a different kind of star. So
oh yeah, no, definitely Hollywood back then with any of the studios was you have somebody under contract, they're going to be a workhorse and you're going to put them in everything and teach them everything. Nowadays people like still work a lot. There are a lot of actors who work a lot, but also they get like actual vacations and stuff like that. And don't fall from exhaustion. Several of the stars. But Jed, what are your thoughts on Marilyn and Jane Russell and everybody in this movie?
I mean, I agree across the board, that the women were the stars, the men were set dressing for most part. The little boy was personality plus for sure. Probably someone's nephew, but he was personality plus. When he walked up to the table and he's just like, yep, this is me. I have a tutor and a coach and a whatever, and I'm going to enjoy my meal times. And I was like, I know what you're going to grow into, you little smarmy thing. And Jane Russell's just like, hey, how am I doing? And, she's making a joke of it at least, because it was kind of awkward and weird. But I like the other men at the table were just like, cool, whatever. And just, I liked I think the scene where the guys made me laugh the most though was the courtroom scene, like the judge and it was so absurd. They're like, here, I'll take the tiara. Here's judge. Here's the tiara. You take the tiara. And I'm like, they were getting into Keystone Cop territory here with you take it. It's yours. And that whole scene, I was just like, what is happening right now? I don't even know what's going on because I left the room. But, no, I think it was definitely a vehicle for Marilyn more than anyone to shine in. I mean, diamonds are a girl's best friend. I'm like, okay, well, now I want to watch Moulin Rouge and, just sit and watch that number over and over again. Jane Russell is a force of her own. She's no Marilyn, but who is? That's not a slight against her because Jane Russell is in her own right a wonderful actress and her own triple threat, like Toni said. And it was a studio system that grinded people up and spit them out and expected all this work out of them for nowhere near the money people get today, right? For doing so much less. And, the hard, and even Marilyn even has a line in there that I almost feel like she could have ad-libbed, which was, a lady never says when her feet hurt. And I'm watching her run around and dance in these heels that made my feet hurt watching her. I was like, oh, she probably meant that. Because she's in these high black heels running up and down those stairs and dancing. And I'm like, oh, honey, your feet, that can't be good. So, it's just, they were just consummate stars. They just went out, they sang, they danced, they played their roles, they learned their lines, and they had probably 3 more films on their contract to get through, and they showed up for every single one. And then the people back there were dressing the guys and putting them where they needed to be for them to play off of. I mean, I couldn't, if you put the fiance and the private detective up on the screen right now for me, I would have to say, okay, take the glasses off the fiance, because that's the only way I could tell them apart. So, I mean, they were fine. They did the job, but yeah, it was all very much just the women were what the movie was. That's what the performances were. Everyone else was fine. Oh.
You just get the director goes, all right, we need the men on set, and they just wheel one out and put him down in front of the women.
Oh no, that's the enjoyable thing about this movie, because it does seem very much like that. It's just like, okay, we need a guy.
I need five more over there. Thanks.
Okay, right, a little bit. Take off your shirt. We're doing the pool scene, which is great because that never happened.
Why were all of their shorts like the same color as their skin? At first, I was like, what? I was like, are they? Oh no. Okay, they're dressed. So it's a little nerve-wracking. Well, hello.
I definitely thought that too. And hi, Kitty. Mine's running around here somewhere. I'm pretty sure if this wasn't up, you'd see him. But I do want to touch base on something that you mentioned, Toni. That in previous films that Marilyn had done, that they did dub over her voice. So this movie, actually, they wanted to dub over Marilyn's voice and Russell's voice when they were singing, because the studio didn't believe they could do it and didn't sound good. But luckily enough, the studio, like the voiceover person, Marnie Nixon, actually fought for Marilyn and for Russell to keep their voices in this film. Only time it's ever dubbed over is Diamonds of a Girl's Best Friend, when she's singing the no parts, when it's like the operatic. That's the only time. How do you think they did, like, singing wise? Because this is the first time like either one of them was given the shot to do it. Like, did you enjoy the songs? Do you think they could have been better? We'll start with you on this one, Toni.
Yeah, I mean, first off, Marnie Nixon, I always love when she pops up, because I think she was the only woman working for like that entire decade. She famously dubbed Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. She's just was their go-to gal, and that kind of voice, that sort of like Julie Andrews, like voice. That was what they deemed as like the only viable option. It wasn't that they were really, really concerned about the variety of voices, which is crazy, because it's like not everybody can be Julie Andrews. Not everybody can have a voice like Marnie Nixon. And it's okay. As we can see here, when you allow Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe, first off, their voices together, fantastic. I forgot how good they are. And meanwhile, Marilyn does not have like crazy range, like a classically trained, person. She does what she can with her voice. But I think it suits her perfectly well. I mean, it sounds like her. It definitely gets the job done. I think she definitely has done, I don't want to say better, but I think her talents are on better display in other films, like her scene in Niagara. She only has one song in that, which is just a really random one-off song in that entire movie. It's not a musical, but she's breathy and mysterious, and it's gorgeous. And she definitely sings in other, she sings that, I want to be loved by you, and Some Like It Hot. And it works for her because it's a very breathy, it's the song that Betty Boop would go on to like, or I think Betty Boop not originated, but Betty Boop was famous for that, boop, boop, be doops, song. And that's where it comes from. So I think that they both were very talented singers, but it just kind of goes to show like how different Hollywood was. I mean, we just let anybody sing nowadays. If we can auto-tune you to some extent, we will let you go ahead and make an entire film where you are a featured, like in a full musical. We let Russell Crowe go ahead and we let that man sing throughout that entire Les Mis movie.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, we just let people sing nowadays, but back then, sure, you could sing on set, but you might get dubbed later. Now we don't dub anybody. We very much just let that hang out. We do what we can in post, but yeah, so I definitely think that the songs are amazing. The songs are awesome. They're very memorable. I forgot how many of the songs that I actually knew or had heard throughout my life. Yeah, so I definitely enjoy the fact that as an anomaly, that it does allow us to actually experience Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, and like actually experiencing them.
Yes, yeah, that's why I love this movie too. It's just like, oh, it's actually them. Which, good job to Marnie Nixon. She actually, because they sang on set anyway before they got dubbed over they have to sing on set. She took both of them and cut their songs together and took it to the studio and was just like, look, it sounds great. Let them do it. That's how she did it. Jen, what were your thoughts on all these songs and for them being able to actually sing for like the first time?
Well, you said that Marnie was the nose at the beginning of Diamonds, and it was so obvious. I was like, the song started and I was like, what is she doing with her voice right now? Because I've been taking singing lessons. Again, it's been a very long time, for about 6 months, maybe longer. And I was like, she sounds real different right now than she has the rest of the movie. And I've been singing different types of songs, and I don't do that with my voice because that can hurt your voice. And then, so now that makes sense. Thank you. I was going to actually look that up after this, but no, that clears up a mystery. No, I enjoyed it. Jane Russell, I love her voice because it's very much in the same range as mine. Marilyn has such a buttery, I just want to wrap myself in her voice. It's so warm, and I mean, Jane's voice is great too, but there's just something about listening to Marilyn sing. It's like wrapping a fur stole around your shoulders, and it's sumptuous. I don't know a better word for it. I really don't. And getting to listen to her, Diamonds are a girl's best friend. I mean, there's so many people have done it, but nobody does it like Marilyn. It doesn't matter. And it's iconic. And Madonna, Nicole Kidman in Moulin Rouge. It's great. It's fun, but there's just something about this version of it. It's perfect. I don't know, except for that beginning part. All the songs are great, but that one in particular.
Yeah, no, all the songs are great. They have a good time. Kyle, what are your thoughts on these songs and Marilyn's voice and Jane's voice and all of that?
So I got to give a shout out to this Marnie Nixon individual because I had no idea that she was a woman and that she would have fought so hard for these women singing. And the only thing that I can honestly think of is that doing so and insisting that women would have, especially women who are normally dubbed over because the studios all wanted a very specific look and feel because we got to move the box office money. We got to get the money. They wanted a very specific look and feel. To have somebody fought that, I would argue that Marilyn being able to sing and people doing this in movies paved the way for a lot of other people in a lot of other avenues, especially women, to make unique choices with voices. And the first thing, honestly, chat might drag me, you guys might drag me, but the first thing, honestly, is if Marilyn were to cut an album today, or back then, but today, she would probably be up there with like one of those avant-garde singers on TikTok, like Melanie Martinez or something, where it's just a very unique voice and a very unique take. So she'd have all these fans being like, making very strange artwork and stuff out of the things that she did because her voice is just so unique. So she'd be this era's like, Melanie Martinez or not Adele, maybe, I don't know, but like, insisting and pushing forward solidarity as far as like different voice takes and things can open up a lot of doors to a lot of different people and a lot of different takes on music. So I applaud this Marnie individual who I had no idea existed until just now. So yay.
Oh yeah, no, she definitely, and I think this is, I mean, there's been a couple of times throughout Hollywood, but this is one of the bigger times to where a woman fought for other women in the industry to be able to do what they wanted to do. So we are getting short here, but I do want to bring up, because you have to if you're talking about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Like, that is probably one of the most iconic scenes and songs from a movie. It's been done over and over, like Jen was saying, from Moulin Rouge to Birds of Prey. Freaking Looney Tunes has done it. Piggy's done it. Like, it's been everywhere. What do you think of like how iconic Marilyn and this song have become? Like, what are your thoughts on all of this? We'll start with you on this one, Jen.
It's just, you could see someone walk out on a stage in a pink strapless dress with a big bustle or bow on the back, and you know what's going to happen. You don't even need the guys in tuxedos with the hearts. You know what's going to happen. The diamonds dripping off her neck. And she means it. Like, to her, that's her best friend. And I don't know. It's just the way she sings it. It's like I said, it's like a warm hug. Olaf would love it. It's a warm hug. I don't know. It's she doesn't even want the guys that are coming around her with, I assume those are supposed to be candy in the hearts, like candy boxes of hearts. She's just like, no, just give me the diamonds. She knows what she wants. She's not going to settle. She wants those diamonds, and she knows what she offers. And I'm not saying that in a like quid pro quo kind of way. She knows what she brings to the table as a person, and it's just, she's not going to settle. But yeah, it is iconic, and it's one of those things where why wouldn't you want to recreate it and somehow honor that scene that is just such a piece of Hollywood history, 70 years later. And like Miss Piggy and all of them, all of the greats, Miss Piggy and Madonna, they've all done it. So it's so iconic. It's such a great scene, and it's right there behind Kyle's head.
Speaking of Kyle, what are your thoughts on this song and its like legacy for 70 years that it's become?
Once again, just reminding that like in the world where we have so many great female vocalists, I think Marilyn would have been up there with like the more unusual ones, like like Melanie. I don't know why I keep thinking of her in comparison to Melanie Martinez. I don't know where this is coming from.
The rasp.
Probably, or like Billie Eilish, just like that unusual sort of sound. As far as the singing goes, I think I shall instead take the opposite point and say that for all of the people that have recreated it and not gotten that automat line correct, like Nicole Kidman, who said Pussycat. So as I'm sitting here watching this and singing along, I go Pussycat, and then it's like the automat, and I'm like, you messed it up for me, and I learned the wrong thing. You've betrayed me, remake of this iconic scene. So that's my, I mean, there's nothing that I can be said that hasn't already been said. So that's my takeaway. How dare you not adapt it correctly and lie to me about pussycats?
I now have to go back and listen to that because I actually don't think I ever caught that. Toni, what are your thoughts on this song? And like, do you think anybody's actually lived up to what Marilyn has done?
Of course not. No. I like everybody's take on it, though. I do enjoy it. I think it was when you have something that is just so like, in order for it to be like really perfect, it has to be elegant. You don't want to take anything else away. You don't want to add anything more. And that's what it was. It was just elegant. It was an amazing, striking, like the perfect dress. The perfect hair, the perfect accessories, the long pink gloves, just the right amount of, dancers and the right amount of set dressing. I mean, like this was like a big, huge number. And I think it's why the third act is just like between the train station and the jail, because like they blew the entire budget on this song is what it felt like. And I was like, that was the right choice because this is fantastic. This is amazing. This is exactly what I showed up for. And it's just, I don't want to add anything. I don't want to take anything away. As far as other people, doing their own take on it. Yeah, you can try, you can do it, to some, success. Absolutely. But I think you have to do something else with it. Because if you just try to make a carbon copy of it, like Madonna, like took the visuals of it, but put an entirely different song. I think we would all agree a similar song about, this was her Material Girl video. Yeah. So that fit, and I was like that, but she didn't do anything else to it. It was the same dress, same gloves, same dudes in the suits. And I was like, yeah, don't mess with anything else. You've already done your take on it. Don't do anything else. And the same thing with Moulin Rouge. They were definitely, striking parallels, and invoking those archetypes. And I really love that. And especially, and again, with Miss Piggy, like, oh, of course, yes, Miss Piggy and Marilyn are like the only two that could ever stand next to each other. So I definitely love that. I wanted to, what was the thing that I wanted to make a statement about? Oh, it's the fact that she would go on to do How to Marry a Millionaire, which I think was released in the same year or very close to it. And she plays another girl who's trying to bag, like the title says, she's trying to marry a millionaire. And in that movie, there's this whole lesson where, like, spoiler alert, the girls don't get to like marry a millionaire, or at least Marilyn doesn't. And I just loved how this movie like treated it, and like treated her like philosophy about like money and security as like something to be rewarded, which is progressive, because I really don't enjoy when society at large pretends that women just have to like fall into relationships. But then she makes the statement like, if I was your daughter, you would want me to be secure, you would want me to be comfortable, you would want me to have the nicest, best things. And that's when, the guy's like, well, say they told me you were stupid. And like, she's like, honey, go over there. Let me and your dad talk, and actually like let the grown-ups talk. So I really enjoy that this movie has a completely different take on it. And it's something that definitely I don't find in a lot of other media, even today in 2023. We always have this idea where like we have to just kind of luck into a good situation. We as like heterosexual women, we have to luck into it. We can't be gold diggers, because if we are, we're bad people. Even though other people that aren't heterosexual women can go ahead and like be very vocal about like, well, I want this and I want that, and I can have these things. But if you're God, like, it astounds me that in 1953, that would have been something that would have been rewarded on screen, to go ahead and say like, no, I want a comfortable life. And not only that, she even goes so far as to say like, it's not just his money. He's very sweet to me. I will never be able to find another millionaire as sweet to me as my fiance. And, I think that just kind of gets glossed over, because the image of Marilyn being just this ditzy, she had a lot of high profile marriages to a lot of very notable men. So I think aura has definitely followed her. So for better, for worse. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of things at play here, but all of it has been influenced by this very iconic song and dance number.
Oh yeah. And it's something that you brought up before we get to our final thoughts and everything like that about Marilyn. I love that line at the end of the movie where she's like, I don't want his money, I want your money. I'm just like, that's perfect. But also have to talk about that Marilyn added one of the smartest lines in this movie towards the end, when she says, I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like that. Like, she added that herself for the character to say. And I'm just like, I feel like she led her life that way as well. It's just like, I'm going to play stupid. I'm not as stupid as you think I am, but I'm going to play very stupid so I can get further and further and further. But now we are coming towards the end, guys. We could talk about this more and more, because it's Marilyn in this movie. But I do want to get you guys' final thoughts about this movie really quickly. We'll start with you on this one, Toni.
This is the movie that I would point to people. there's only like a handful of others that I could say are like the perfect like 1950s Technicolor like spectacles, like Dancing in the Rain, Singing in the Rain. Couple of others that are like, right up there as far as like spectacle and budget and movie stars that are still like, relevant to this day. This is just classic. It's iconic. It is classic Hollywood. And it's really nice to go back and revisit a movie where you're just like, man, I forget how iconic this is, and for all the reasons. And then having to like go back and like reassess and analyze and break down all of the social and cultural and historic, context that goes into something being truly iconic, to the point where it's like emulated and replicated and duplicated, over the years. I didn't get Moulin Rouge. I don't think I would have gotten Moulin Rouge as much as I did if I hadn't watched this movie prior. I'd be really curious to see, I don't think because I usually hung around the musical theater crowd, most of the people that watched Moulin Rouge when it came out were very aware of Marilyn and Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number. So it's things like that. And not only that, but even just these, behind you, Eric, are like these iconic, red dresses that they wore. I'm like, I know that image. I've seen it everywhere. I'm into vintage fashion. I see it no less than at least like once every 2 weeks. It's just incredible, like the things that we just kind of like forget. And I also just want to give a shout out too, because with the demise of TMC, not happy about that. Yeah. So, I mean, it just sucks that, we're not, unless it's that niche interest, I don't think people are really educating themselves about classic films. So I really do appreciate that we're taking this opportunity to kind of like, talk about it now. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Jen, what are your final thoughts on this film?
I'm glad I revisited it. I probably should have watched it again sooner than I had, but they throw new shiny stuff at us, and sometimes we forget to go back and look at these. And it would be a shame if this movie was only remembered for one musical number, because it's a lot more than that. It also would be a shame, I mean, I think it would be great if Marilyn could be remembered for the body of her work and not the things that have been coming out recently to represent her, like the recent movie with Ana de Armas, who I'm sure did a wonderful job, but I won't watch the movie. And like Toni said, people need to go back and revisit these things, or we're going to lose something. We're going to lose a big part of Hollywood history, and Marilyn is iconic in that. And then one day she's just going to be an image. So I think it is important, and I'm glad also that we did this movie, that we talked about this movie tonight, and hopefully it'll spark some people to go back and rewatch it. And Jane Russell, I mean, also an icon, just stunning. These women are stunning, and if you just Google them, the way they dressed and carried themselves and lived their lives, go back and watch their other movies, their lesser known movies, and just look at them. They're amazing. So yeah, I really enjoyed revisiting it, even though it's been a million years, because my kids are old now too. So it was fun to revisit it. Here's some songs that it felt like for the first time, and then of course to see Gentlemen, what's the one with the pink dress? Help me out here. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Sorry.
Gentlemen are
from yesterday, still hitting my brain. But yeah, no, I'm really glad I did. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm glad you guys had me. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And Kyle, what are your final thoughts on this film?
I had something really, no, okay, I'm not gonna open up a can of worms here. I shall simply say that seeing this felt very foundational, and there's a lot of work here that doesn't just build up these two actresses, it doesn't just build up these two movies, but there's a lot of bricks and mortar and foundations that build up stories in Hollywood. And one of the things that admittedly was on my mind when I first watched this was Marilyn, was the iconic image, and was how people might want to still use that image and abuse that image. And as the industry moves into different discussions, such as that were similar to, okay, well, we're using these people not as stars or people with agency, but we're using these people as, in effect, people like stable people, like, we just have them, we churn out product, we're not treating them like people. And then you look at the current debate in the industry around artificial intelligence, and all I'm going to say about it, because it is a thing, you look at the current debate, Marilyn, it feels like would be one of the very first images that people would want to use. And that's the thing with this, is that you can't bring the level of pathos to new material that she did in this. And yeah. I think that is definitely something that people would need to, because her image has been so exploited and not used. And honestly, like I told you guys at the beginning, my first real exposure to Marilyn Monroe was those sequin jewel bags that people would sell at little kiosks, and it had Marilyn, or like, stuff on t-shirts. And this woman delivered a genuine performance. And it's like, as we progress to where we're asking, what does an image mean? I think it is prudent to keep things like this alive. And I'm very grateful that I was brought in to watch this, and that I could, learn, and that it just added to the debate for me, and made me more determined than ever to make sure that, images like these are respected. So thank you all for having me.
Oh yes, of course. Thank you so much for actually like watching it for the first time and enjoying it as much as the rest of us enjoyed it, because it's a great movie. Those are my final thoughts on this. It's a great, fantastic movie. Like, definitely go see it for everyone in the class, mainly Russell and Monroe. And if you haven't seen any of the classic 50s films, go back and watch those too, because they're wonderful, especially Gentlemen Prefer Brunettes, which Russell did after this, is actually a great movie as well. Go and see that. But I want to thank you guys for joining us today. But we're out of time, unfortunately. But I want you guys to be able to let the people out there know where they can find you. We'll start with you on this one, Kyle. Where can they locate you out there?
So you can find me on Blue Sky at kylepoddig.bluesky. Just KYLE, P as in Peter, O as in Oscar, D as in dirt, D as in dog, I as in ice cream, and G as in garden. And you can find me on Blue Sky at the moment, trying to get that out there, and then on TikTok at Caroline, CAROLING_cosplay. And those right now are my two big things that I'm promoting.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here. Jen, where can everybody out there find you and what you're doing?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at do_as_Peggy says, and you can follow my adventures with the Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, at California Avengers, also on Instagram.
Nice. Well, thank you for being here. And Toni, where can they locate you out there?
Yeah, you guys can find me on all the social media at the Toni Sanchez. It's Toni with an I, Sanchez with a Z.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you guys all for tuning in. Be sure to join our Discord to keep this conversation going, as well as subscribing to all of our other platforms at Nom Talk Network. Thank you for joining us for talking about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez. You can find me on all platforms except for the Twitter app at Heartless7. That's HARTL, the letters 3SS7. But thank you for being here. And please tune into our next show, which I believe is going to be the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is very exciting. But until then, everybody out there, have a nomorific day. Bye.